Hello everyone, welcome to today's episode. I wanted to talk about a very interesting idea that I noticed, and I wanted to make an announcement about an episode after this, which is a very important episode that has to do with, in some sense, I feel I've discovered a metaphysical system from a collective being's perspective. But anyways, for this episode specifically, I made the observation, first of all, the title is Emotional Reactions to a Subjective Inner... I've written it in different ways here. In the subtitle, I've written it, Emotional Reactions to a Subjective Inner Realm Suggest a Non-Physical Creature. And then the first version of the title of the talk, I've written it here in my notes, where I've written Emotional Reactions to an Inner Subjective Realm Suggest we are not physical creatures. So I have stumbled upon, you can say, or in my own observations of life, come to a point where I notice something interesting that is happening in human life, and we have been living for some time now as human beings with this perception that we are physical and material creatures only, right? To the degree that people talk about minds, but the mind is not an object, and they talk about the mind's production, what the mind produces, which is imagination, which people treat it as it's not real. But there is something there, where I can say that if these episodes of mine are attempts at trying to get clues of what is actually going on here for intelligence, there's first of all different frameworks one can approach it, but the main observation that I'm diving into is that I noticed that human beings have another world where, call it the inner realms, or a subjective inner realm, subject-based inner realm. But I noticed that our reactions are emotional reactions. And what are emotions? Some describe it as they are reactions to images of what one wants to be, or what was, or what can be lost, a sort of response to something that has happened before it has happened, or something that has happened that implies something won't happen or will happen. So my main observation, the main point I'm trying to make here, is that human beings, which are just physical material creatures, they are reacting to another world that is overlaid upon this actual world of ours that we live in. And the reason I'm saying it, it suggests an emotional reaction to one's imagination or inner realm suggests we're not physical creatures, because the physical creature is defined by physical phenomenology. That means we are a physical creature because we're in a physical world. But when we respond, it's as if, you know what it is? It's as if our body is in one world, our mind is in two. Now, this mind that is in two worlds, it is reacting to the events that happen in those two worlds, okay? And this is where I would say an explanation of art, an exploration of inspiration, and an explanation of divinity, which in some sense, what is the spirit in and where is it moving? That means on a rock in the middle of nowhere, something is moving, ladies and gentlemen. Something is moving. And this is, I would say, beyond any narrative, mysterious and fascinating. That means so many people are under the impression that this world of ours can be contained in a shape. Okay, thanks for letting me know in the chat section that the music was too loud. I turned it down. Hopefully it should be okay. I honestly hope that people could have heard what I've said so far, but through the way I speak, I tend to pull the ideas that I've walked through, into where I'm going. So, anyways, where I was going with this so far, you can say, is that on a rock in the middle of nowhere, carbon-based life forms that have gone through some sort of strange urge of updating, a sort of evolution of not just you know what it is? It's as if like there's a world that's changing, and the way it changes in different ways, we have termed it. We have pretty much made out of one giant verb, as if one giant verb was the whole world, and we slammed it like glass to the ground, and it shattered to endless small world, endless small verbs, which each verb implies a sort of, each terminology I use about an action implies a certain part of it. What I'm trying to say is, that in the quest to wonder about the heart of hearts, that means it's as if when we see the evolution of a biological entity, and what is biology? It is chemistry masquerading. And what is chemistry? It is physics masquerading. And what is physics? It is the unknown masquerading, where the mystics come into the picture of the world. There will come a day where the mystics will be seen as the mystic will be seen as the most important archetype. It would be seen as the edge of the sphere that was an illusion for too long. You know, when let's say a sophisticated carbon life form changes, we call that evolution. And in some sense, when from a potential pool of energy there is an explosion and there's cosmic inflation, inflation, we can say, is in some sense the cosmos evolution, the evolution of the cosmos. So in this physical landscape, and as the train of history carries us as passengers through time, a complex elemental combination began having the potential, this is all through a very vast time, to have a potential to become animate and to become organized in a very unique fashion, in the sense of there wasn't any creatures, it was just an elemental setting, just pure physics, and then pure physics suddenly turned into chemistry, and chemistry turned into biology. So let's say pure chemistry, and then suddenly we turned into biology, and there was the game of creaturehood, This game of creaturehood somehow transformed from an object into a subject. So the periodic table evolved into a creature. The creature evolved into a subjective personality. Now the subjective personality, which is conscious through the embodiment of the creature, is wondering what is the next step, on the staircase of transcendence beyond time, So now, and the way I speak, guys, think of it as if this whole episode is a blank canvas, and I'm painting different sides of it, rather than just going sequentially. Anyways, back to the point. I'm saying that there was a sort of physical evolution. This physical evolution became a sort of non-physical evolution. Now, on the way of it becoming non-physical evolution, when I say non-physical evolution, that means suddenly sound wasn't sound anymore. Sound became information, and it became information that could be organized in accordance to how we biologically had the design of memory. So it's as if it's like, how do you get a creature? You create a pattern. Let's perceive it as the DNA, some genetical pattern that is accumulating, storing, a storage house. Imagine like a truck where it's whatever it's seeing, it's throwing in the trunk. So this genetical accumulation of information created the alphabet of perception, and in the correlation of events to sound and images to sound. Because what is an event? An event is a moving image. So in some sense, something happened where the ability to store information began being used as a sort of backup archive. As a sort of a system, as a sort of pool of information where the creature could at any time swim through and remember what it did yesterday, and remember words, and remember concepts, and in some sense be this civilized human being. And the civility comes in remembrance. Usually I've heard this often, where whenever somebody's angry, what do people say? Or when somebody is like hopeless or in despair or in anguish, what do people say? To love those people who care for that being, come and say, remember yourself. Or in some sense, you see it in some shows where it's as if there's a parent and their son has gone, or daughter has gone into some field of work that is, let's say, has its own cultural hazard. And so the parent is seeing, for example, the misled path of their child. And what does the parent do? Keep saying, remember yourself, remember yourself. So it is pointing back to an ability of us, even though we're saying, I am one self, look, I have one name, and okay, sure, I have one kind of personality, but we, behind our eyes, we are a storehouse. We're literally, I don't want to use this term, but it fits, a factory building, a factory of senses of self have come and gone by. Do you know what it is? It's as if, like, imagine Iron Man didn't make one Iron Man suit, but every day he woke up, he made a new Iron Man suit, and he remembered how it felt going through it. This is very complex, and we as creatures have this ability to a natural level. So, now, back to the point of how does an emotional reaction to an inner realm content suggest that we were never just physical creatures. And so this is the argument that I can say I am like an old school sculptor who took a chunk of rock, like a simple observation, and is like slowly over time sculpting. What I noticed, again, I will say this because I feel this is an incredibly important observation, in a person's life, due to the ability of memory, due to the storehouse of memory, when the person experiences an event, anything, let's say you're walking outside by the street and you see somebody who has a dog, and somebody, let's say, is petting a dog's head, is just petting the dog, showing kindness to another species, which our species needs to practice. And so that person suddenly sees that in outer event, that perception of somebody petting a dog, suddenly in that instant, like a time traveler behind their eyes, they go back to a memory where years ago they were in a different country and they were petting the head of another dog. Do you know? So it's one of those things where I would say, while the person is experiencing a physical event, an inner realm event can take place, can be stimulated, and let's say stimulated in the moment, and the person's feeling, they were walking in the grocery store, right, and they saw somebody petting a dog. They're not petting the dog, they're not getting the sensations, the feeling of what that's like, but because they have the memory, that whole sensation comes, and their reaction after remembering when they had pet a dog suddenly changes them in the moment, right? Emotionally changes their moment. Or when somebody even tells you news, you know, or imagine you're an employee and your boss comes and says you're fired, right? In the inner realm of the employee, it's like before the employee had heard those words, everything was good, you know, smooth sailing. Suddenly, when the boss said that, it's as if the ship is sinking, you know? So the person is reacting to another world where an event is taking place, where when you close your eyes and what you see right now, whoever's listening to me, close your eyes and just remember any moment in your life, just remember something, you know, you will see your eyes are closed, there's no light beams entering your eyes, but you are seeing. There is something as your intelligence able to see when your eyes are closed. And that space where I use the term inner realm for is a space, is a world where we are active and alive. So if you were to define, do you know, a creature as real, we are using the method of being like, all right, physical, biological body, and then there's a world, and I touch this table, and when I, like, there's a table right now for me, when I touch this table, and there, you know, I'm a physical being in a physical world. My body's physical, the table is physical, and then there's a sensation of, like, from the nerve endings at the tip of the finger, which feel the table, right? But if somebody was to close their eyes, that inner event is equivalent in the result of the reaction of the person as if they had touched the table. Do you know? It's literally like, why are people reacting to virtual reality? Do you know virtual reality goggles? Do you see what I mean? That means there is something about the human intelligence that is receiving stimulus from somewhere else, another room. This whole time we have been alive and we have been ignoring it, and we all say we have minds, but we don't know what the mind is. Do you know? And the unknown every day is staring at us, and so is time. You know, when birds learn to fly, there's only one way. You jump in the sky. Jump in the sky. And so there are mysteries surrounding the human experience, and we are not jumping in the sky enough. Now there can be two explanations. I can see a way more material inspired inclination to this idea. When you look at it through materialistically, the mind is a simulation. So what that means is that free will remains as an incredible mystery, and it's just elements became this complex. That means we're not just carbon-based life forms. Do you see what I mean? It's like the periodic table has incarnated as all of us. But there is another level that has been attained. That means somehow, think of how incredible this is, that in one physical world there arose a creature that could look at that world, close its eyes, change it, and then open its eyes and behave anew, and we call that civilization. It was the conscious ability to utilize the capability of our perception so far. And the journey goes on, sometimes, sometimes people may think I have a time traveler's ego. But I will tell you, there's moments where, just like if you were to pull a string, and you just pull a string from some cloth or something, and you find out how the cloth is made, even though the cloth is no more after. But it's like sometimes I look at events in life, and I observe certain things happening in human civilization, and to me, it's as if they have an echo. Do you know? Things have an echo. You see, for example, somebody calm, your mind can see the echo of that personality in that moment. But the fascinating thing is that even though we may see another person, we will never be able to see them as they see themselves. You know why? Because we are travelers. We are literally an unknown watcher journeying through a known world. And when it has been stable enough for us to acknowledge the same thing, then we have all found like the same room. We call it a cosmos. Now, this kind of satisfies the argument I started with. I'm pretty much saying, if we close our eyes, we envision and visualize this or remember some scenery, some event, and we open our eyes and we see our stimulus of the body, the behavior of our body has changed in accordance to that event. There is more and more and more to everything. That it is impossible, actually, in one lifetime to be able to capture the whole picture, because the picture is an infinite film. So the meaning of life cannot be in meaning. It cannot be in just a contained form. Do you see it? It can't be like a film that has a beginning and ending. For us, maybe, but for the mysteries of the cosmos surpass the human being. That means there's many reasons that a person shouldn't want immortality, right? Some people are like, hey man, it's like there's. I'll share a story from Alexander the Great with you. But I would say, like, culturally, in the future there may be way of speech where people are like, hey man, it's like, don't sign up, don't register for immortality. What if there's other dimensions, and it's like, you want to just stick around in this dimension? I could totally see like frameworks of thought that are approached that way. But there is something about immortality where, to the philosopher, it is an endless opportunity. That means the cosmic mystery, and the human mystery. Two different things. The story that was shared from Alexander the Great is that Alexander the Great was this incredible conqueror, and he had conquered, you can say, a vast empire. He had, in some sense, he experienced the level of kinghood, emperorhood, that no living human being now can experience something like that. But anyways, he had conquered so much, and so he suddenly one day realized that life is temporary, and the only thing he hasn't conquered is death. So there was the story of the fountain of youth at the time, and so Alexander the Great, one evening, or one day, he just looks at all the people around him and he says, I have one command for you. Find me the fountain of youth. And everybody wants to find the fountain of youth. And eventually, some people, those of his council, they come to him and they're like, we found it. And at first he's like, should I distrust them? But at the same time, it's as if it's like too big of an idea to ignore. And so he is taken to this place where it's like this vast vertical cliff, and it's said that there's a cave. Imagine a vertical cliff, and there's suddenly a cave in there. And so Alexander the Great, he has to climb alone. Nobody can assist him when you're climbing a vertical cliff, And so he is courageous, he's a conqueror, and he chooses to conquer this challenge, and he goes forth. And he's climbing. Suddenly he sees the cave, and he gets in the cave, and at the edge of the corner of the cave, there is like a stream that is going underground, but a part of the stream is outside at the edge of the cave. That means the stream is in the cave. Some certain part of it is just visible. Excuse me, the stream is in the mountain, a certain part of it is visible in the cave. And so Alexander the Great goes there, and he puts his hands in the fountain of youth, and he's about to drink the water, and right before he's thirsty too, he just climbed a vertical cliff, And before he drinks it, he hears a voice, and the voice says, don't drink it. And he looks around and he sees nobody in the cave. And he suddenly goes again to drink it, and next second time he goes to drink it, he hears it again, a voice that says, don't drink it. And he turns around and he sees at the corner of the cave, there is a crow. And this crow tells him that I was a human being, and I drank from this fountain of youth, and now I am immortal, but I became a crow. And it's a metaphor for the dullness and the ignorance that immortality can bring to that which does not accept its natural progression in the realm of the cosmos. And Alexander the Great doesn't drink it, and he climbs down, and that's when I would say he was truly a wise conqueror. Human beings surpass names, banners, and walls. Especially when we've built planes, So, even though I said that about Alexander the Great, I also wanted to share that for a philosopher, there's the cosmic mystery and the human mystery. And the human mystery arises from the moment of the human form, but the cosmic history is way before us, it's older. That means if mysteries were siblings, the human mystery is the younger sibling. Think of it this way, it's like a human mystery, a planetary mystery, an existential world mystery. So, if there is another dimension of information which still causes behavioral change in the human being, to find a solution for the healthy human behavior becomes, in some sense, a much more harder challenge. That means mental health, just the context of it completely shifted. Do you see? That means on some level of your being in the moment, you are a pilot. And on another level, you're a passenger. Do you know? And in another level, you are the sky. You know, it's as if 3 dimensions. Think of it as body, mind, soul. In traditional sense, they would see it. So in regards to the mysteries of the body, one world of information. When it comes to the mysteries of the mind, the observer within observes many worlds, as many as your memories compartmentalize or your visualizations compartmentalize. Even the word compartmentalize. There is also, I would say, a component to human intelligence where it's comparing. So it's as if when a person is not comparing, let's say you just teleported somewhere and you teleported in a universe and you had no, let's say you teleported from Earth into some extraterrestrial civilization. Let's say somebody made teleportation technology and it had a glitch. Right? And some person got into that teleportation machine and suddenly they realized they were thrown into another species, let's say similar to humanoid, but on another species on a totally different part of like the solar system, you know? And they found themselves suddenly in that world. And in the shift of teleportation, there was another glitch and they forgot as well. So it's as if when you're new, you have no reference point to compare to have value. So that means the concept of meaning and value, it needs more than one moment. Because if it's just a simple moment, you know, a single moment, it is as if the meaning is the moment. It's kind of like the color, how they say the color blue is a universal. That means it's like a single moment is the meaning. If the moment is compared to another moment, that's where a story of meaning can be provided. That means if we opened our eyes but we were statues and it was just like a photograph all of life, seeing all of life, so suddenly, you know, it's like there would be no movement for a story to emerge, for a character in a world to actually be able to consider itself. something else I would like to share, and then I'm gonna close part 1 of this episode. Then in a little bit I'll share part 2. But I wanted to share that recently, I mean, not just recently, I've done it often, but there's been times where I do a very strange sort of, you can say, a sort of hilarious meditation, where I just jump on my bed, and the way I jumped on the bed, I just remain there. I don't move after I, you know? And there's been moments where I'm just lying in the bed, and I decided to move my finger. Just move my fingers and wonder about, okay, where is the signal of movement and how is it occurring? And so I want to share a point about that in regards to this ability we have of utilizing another world of information while being in one physical world and non-physical realm of having access to a sort of non-physical subjective reality. So while I was on bed, I was moving my fingers, and I was wondering, how am I moving it? So first I had the thought, like, all right, I'm going to move my finger, and then I moved my finger. Then I decided to move my finger without having the thought. That means just randomly moving it without having, in my inner realms, an image that I'm already moving my finger. You know, that means, like, I'll give you an example. Right now there's a cup of coffee in front of me. I'll give you another example for my example. It's like there's a cup of coffee in front of me. In my inner realms, I see myself picking that up and drinking it. And then my hand moves and I drink that cup of coffee. So it was as if inner realm event took place, then the outer realm body followed up that inner realm event. Now, also, the person can do things without having the image already built up in the inner realms. This was the observation I made. That means before I can see myself, for example, midway, you know what it is? It's as if, like, imagine somebody sees, like, an apple falling from a tree, and before it hits the ground, they catch the apple. Okay? They see the apple falling before their inner realm. It's as if, how can I say, before the apple falls, they catch it. Now it's like in the inner realm, when I was visualizing the coffee, it's like midway through the inner realm event of my hand grabbing the coffee and me drinking it, me seeing a picture of that. It's as if my hand had already gone towards the coffee. So our reaction to our inner realm is instantaneous. And the biggest suggestion of this, I would say, is when you look at children and you give a child a toy, it's happy, celebrating, you take the toy away, it cries. You know, imagine a young child that doesn't have a personality yet, but it still has memory and visuals. So it's like when you give the child the toy back, the child suddenly smiles, or you give the child another toy, or you distract, or when a child is like in pain, the parent's distracted, right? So the child's attention doesn't go on the pain, and they say it's okay, and you know what I mean? Look at this toy. Do you see what I mean? Like, there's that sort of approach. So what is that? That is a suggestion that the behavior of our body instantaneously reacts to the inner realm image, but in the outer realms there's a delay. Do you know? In the outer realms, like, something can happen and it could take a while before the person notices it. But if in the inner realm it happens, it has an instant reaction to the body. Now here's the thing. People who have not realized that their intelligence is observing their inner realms, and they might have, through fear or whatever conditioning they've gone through, constantly react instantaneous reactions to the inner realm. And this is the biggest challenge of kindness. A person could be like, I'm super kind, then some moment finds them where they're totally forgetting about the kindness, and they're like, this person wronged me, do you know what I mean? And so it's as if the whole kind framework is gone, the whole good person framework is gone, because the outer event is reshaping it, right? And in their inner realms, they're reacting to the outer realm event. But if one can realize what percentage of their suffering problems, conflicts, whatever, is due to inner realm phenomenology and instantaneous reactions to it, and what level of it is in the outer realm. That means I'm not a psychologist or a therapist, but I would say if I was, and somebody came and said, yo, I got this problem, whatever problem they have, first question I would ask, what percentage of the problem is physical and non-physical? What percentage of the problem is happening because what's happening in front of your eyes, and what percentage is happening behind you, what's in your subjective realms, right? So the inner realm, outer realm filter, the sieve of the inner realm, outer realm in regards to scoping where the source of the problem. And let's say the person is living an incredible outer life, but they're sad, they're hollow, or behind their eyes there's a sort of anguish or despair, you know. So that person, their problem is in the inner realm, and the moment their inner realm through understanding changes, their whole problem vanishes and goes away. But if the problem is from the outer realm, then the outer realm event has to change, right? So it's as if, like Sherlock Holmes, we're trying to figure out the source of human behavior and trying to figure out how much of it is because of the way the person is walking behind their eyes and the way they're walking in front of their eyes, you know. And I'll tell you, like, this past week was a very unique week for me. I was in a sort of, I don't know, in a sort of kind of like, usually I pilot very smoothly in regards to analytically, but it was as if emotionally it wasn't smooth piloting. And I suddenly, how can I tell you, it's as if stepped out of the Iron Man suit or the idea suit that the inner realm event was putting me in, or I had allowed myself to enter. You know, and it's like having a problem and in an instant realizing you don't have the problem. Or when they say you have a problem, it's because you have held on to it. You've held on like the collar of the problem, you know, and you're like, hey problem, why are you here? But you've held on to it. So this observation is key to not just observe. I mean, pretty much all of mysticism, they call mystics lovers of the unknown, and what mystics do is that they're just creatures in a world, and they're like, what am I though, you know? And so, and so they go into nature, they sit still and silent, and they watch their intelligence as it is happening, as it is being live streamed to their consciousness. And as they watch their mind, they notice, let's say you've sat still and silent, spine straight, and you've sat on beside a tree in a park or somewhere. Or let's say you're a busy CEO, businessman, you know, or even a president of a nation, and it's like midway in your whole presidential stature and work and all this, you suddenly take off your shoes, you go and walk outside of like the presidential hall, you know, and into the yard, and you see a tree and you sit beside a tree meditating. I am waiting for that day where a politician is seen meditating beside a tree. Do you know, a complete shift in the character that we value. And so imagine you're a president. It's as if not just your national problems, international problems as well. Like a president has to be like a Photoshop, like how Photoshop has layers, has to have at least like, I don't know, like 20 layers of perception, do you know? So anyways, imagine that person sitting still and silent, and let's say the president of a nation went and sat under a tree, shoes off, just sitting there, just being in the moment, and the president is like, what should I do? And in that moment, it's like ripples of a pond settling. In every way your attention had extended itself, in every concept your attention had extended itself into. Suddenly it's as if you see the possessions of your inner realms. And when I say possessions, pun intended, possessions as in what you have owned, and in some sense what ideas have owned you. You know, in the outer realms, human beings have advanced, great job. I mean, it's not a perfect world, but it's as if like mass slavery is at least gone, and the global culture is like, yeah, freedom. Why shouldn't we be free? We're temporarily here. Why shouldn't we be incredibly efficient? We're temporarily here. And so, the attention, as if a light misguided on different inner phenomenology, or as Immanuel Kant would call it, numenology, the numinous. So it's as if your attention, as you've just sat by a tree, underneath a tree, still and silent, your attention, it's as if light beams that had extended out from you suddenly are all coming back. Imagine suddenly the light sun commanding all the sunbeams that had gone to the edge of the universe to return. And it's as if all of time reversed. Like the sun, like a sponge, just, you know, how a sponge soaks water, it soaks back all its sunlight. You know, it's as if, like, humorously, suns are givers, black holes are takers. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is that your attention that had, in some sense, flown into different archetypal subjective selves, it all returns to a single, simple moment. And then the person comes to, as the New Age community has tried to keep like a jewel covered by fantasy, covered by the dirt of fantasy, the here and now, the greatest source of mental health for a planet and any creature anywhere. If you teleported in any sort of reality, any sort of world, let's say the technology for that comes in the future, you have an ability to be like, okay, I am here now. I am now here. The here. Do you see? So as the person has, I'm going to go back to this, let's go to the president metaphor. The president sits down and all the attention from all the different problems of reform, policy, and decisions, all of it return, and the ripples of the pond in some sense settle, and it's as if the unconscious light of your intelligence that had extended into phenomenology and numenology, or that had extended into numenology, it all returns, and then for the first time consciously, the light within the being extends. As the poet Rumi says, silence is the language of God, all else is poor translation. And to be silent in an infinite world is such an incredibly challenging but easily accessible task. Let me tell you why it's incredibly challenging. Because the way the cosmic setting is positioned, it gives way more. That means some people may feel they're not inspired, but it's as if there's way more content to walk towards. There's so much to say, endless. That means if I was an immortal being, I would just, it's like these talks could go endless. They could go more than 10,000. Do you know? But because I'm mortal, then there is in some sense calculation. There's strategy that comes in. And I would say the strategist has to be not disconnected, but has to have a sort of out-of-body experience from the event that is taking place. That means it's like you got to be able to see yourself from outside of yourself, but not in a spiritual sense, in just an intelligent, capable, an intelligent way that the capacity of our intelligence provides. Something like that, I would say. So guys, I'm gonna make this part 2. I gotta go do something really quickly, and I'll be back in a little bit for. I'm gonna make this part 1, and I'll be back for part 2. So, just as a quick checkpoint and a recap. Rather than human beings fighting over we are physical, we are non-physical, rather than we in some sense saying, the person is atheist, theist, spiritualist, or agnostic, or various different angles we can take, it's as if there is something happening here, and there's different ways we can zoom into it, or we can access this intelligent event we call a world happening. Right? So this means there is no one perception. It's as if there was a point, there's a circle, it's like 180 degrees doesn't make the circle, but you can visualize what the circle would look like. So I'm saying that